Hi, Camille.
How are you?
I'm great. It's so crazy because today I messaged my team and I was like, you guys, I really want to talk to somebody that works in AI. And then I saw you and I was like, that's amazing. I'm so happy I forgot that we had that scheduled and that's exactly what felt like talking about. So
It's in the atmosphere. That must be.
it's been working like crazy, the atmosphere. So um thanks for joining.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to
Awesome.
meet you. So you're calling in from Idaho,
Yeah, North Idaho.
North Idaho. Okay. And you're a product engineer?
Yeah, I'm currently a product engineer. I transitioned from mechanical engineering. So I got my degree in mechanical engineering from University of Idaho, and then I transitioned into product with my current startup that I'm at.
So tell me, like, who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And then we'll get into what you're working on now.
Sure. So I'm definitely really passionate about technology, emerging technology, and creating better technology. So when it comes to AI, even my work there has been to talk and to advocate for understanding bias, unintentional and harmful bias in AI. I've been able to travel the world and talk about this from San Francisco to Budapest, which I'm really
Wow.
happy about. And then, back when I was a student, like a high school student in Boise, Idaho. I was homeschooled and I had an interest in space science. So that's what got me into STEM and into technology in general, and went and started my bachelor's degree. But one of the things I really realized and kind of capitalized on is this upskilling nature of tech, the ability to go to different areas of the tech world based on your interest and your passion. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. So it took me a little longer to get my degree, but it was because I was doing internships at companies, I was writing articles about my experience and using that to propel where I went. In my career versus using that degree as the only thing I that was motivating me. So a lot of things packaged in a small time, but I'm really happy to be here. And now I work from home in North Idaho, and I love it. And so glad to be here. Yeah.
That's great. And what are you working on? You said you worked at a startup?
Yeah. So the startup I'm working at, we're really passionate about upskillers too. So this is really awesome for me to live that out. And I'll just talk about one of the products we have. I think it's easier that way. So one of the things we're doing is we're offering an accelerator to students, specifically people who came out of a boot camp, maybe they didn't get that job, that tech job, or someone who's transitioning, kind of like how I did, from mechanical to software engineering or something like that. And we lead them through a 3 month accelerator where we give them job seeking tips and search tips. We have a platform that allows them to tell us the role that they want and where it is. And we put together a playbook for them based on the company that they're looking for a role from. So that gives them outreach templates. It gives them the ability to help tailor their resume. And so
So
that's one of the projects we're
what is your what's your day to day like?
My day to day is so different from what it used to be. It used to be I was doing like robotics hardware. So now I'm doing platform engineering. So that's anything from front end to just understanding the infrastructure that we're creating. So, maybe infrastructure engineering would be a better word. And then outside of that, I spend a good 50% of my time understanding clients from an engineering perspective, which I like. So that's working with clients on their accelerator. I do work as a career coach too, which is kind of exciting to just see it from more like a company point of view, because I've never been at a company whose prime audience is getting people tech jobs at other companies. So that's also really interesting, just seeing it from a customer point of view. I think I'm learning a lot. Hopefully, one day I can take this bulk of experience and find a VP role or something like that. I think that would be a
Mhm.
really cool 5-10 year goal. So yeah.
But what if like what tell explain to me what being like an engineer is like. Like what are you when you're
Oh,
day to day, like what do you do? Like
I mean, I think part of it is being a little different. So in my day to day, if I'm not having a conversation with a client or a customer, I'm looking at, engineering is really about systems. So for me, that's one of the reasons why I love engineering. I love understanding systems and delving into them. So when it comes to building a platform, oftentimes, it's not recognized that there are a lot of different pieces working together. And so the idea is if all these pieces are working together, you don't see the back end, you don't see where it could fall apart. So I'm here to understand, like, oh my goodness, we need to send out emails to people and they're not getting to them. Like, and these emails are important for them, you know, being in our accelerator, getting through the program, and being on our platform. So my job is to go and fix that issue. I untangle a lot of things because at a startup, right, you wear different hats. And
Yeah.
so my job is to look at our back end, say we have some failings here. Maybe it's security failing, which, you know, we fix, or maybe it's a communication problem that's that might even end up deplatforming people later. That's a bad thing when you're a platform. Like deplatforming is awful. Just tell that to, you know, some of the other people in the tech these days, right? So that's part of my job, is looking at things from an infrastructure standpoint. That's the
And
engineering work. Yeah, go
and
ahead.
you were talking about bias. Like, what is it about bias and AI that interests you?
Okay, yeah. So from an engineer standpoint, right, I understand and look at different systems all the time. And so sooner or later, probably about 2015, I started to recognize a pattern that was not understanding or having enough conversation around building a product for one group of people, then another group of people takes it up and wants to use it, and it doesn't connect. So if, for example, if you're building a technology that's based on hearing voices, right? What if there was someone with you do all this test and you get it to work right, but then someone else uses your product and they have a different accent and it can't work. I want to understand why that happens and then why we don't fix it. Because what we see is a propagation of these errors, especially when it comes to using frameworks. Just like I use frameworks all the time at work. If they have inherent biases that are just baked in, it won't work for other people. So an example I give is in image recognition. Image recognition has been notoriously bad for people with dark skin, people like me, African American, and it won't necessarily register or at least correctly identify whether it's that I'm a human or whether my actual identity, it might misidentify me as someone else. There are people
Or
who have gone to
gender
jail
and gender. Like,
and
I
gender.
I have this huge problem because of we use image tagging. We use AI image tagging, and they label, like, sometimes, like, kids as adults, women as men as women. And it's so crazy because I got an email the other day and it was like, how come all your kids are white on Scopio? And I was like, there's no way. Like, my audience is so diverse. Our photographers are from 150 countries. If anything, we have the opposite problem because we have such a global net. And then I was like, oh my God, the stupid labeling, the tagging and titling is correctly doing that for the white children, but not for the children of
Oh,
other colors. Like, so I
yeah.
emailed Amazon and I'm like, Amazon, you have to fix this. This is like, we will give you our photos and we'll collaborate with you. Same thing with IBM. We spoke with them too. And I'm like, if I can give my photo set, I know that you didn't have access to these images. It's not your fault. Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't have
Yeah.
access to them before, but now we do have access to them. So let's use
Yeah.
them to improve. Like, if a black man is wearing braids, he's a woman. Like, come on, take a
Yeah.
thousand. Like, how many images do you need to take? 1,000 images of black men with braids to retrain that AI? Like, how hard is it from your perspective? Tell me.
Yeah.
Some of these systems are really hard to fix. Some of them are not. When people are thinking about in terms of numbers, like what they have to do, like, how can you
Oh,
give
yeah.
people, like, that don't know anything about AI? Can you explain what it really takes to start correcting some of these things?
Yeah, if you see a mistake like that, right, and we're attributing the mistake to not enough data, it's something more like 10,000 images that need to be implemented into the system to correct a bias. And even then, most likely there's a secondary option that's being used, which is called rules. Just like, you know, we have rules for games, they have rules that they introduce to algorithms to tell them, hey, be careful. This is a labeling process that we want to take out of your hands, basically, because we know that there is a social faux pas if you get this wrong. And so a lot of times in the earliest examples of the same thing happening, you know, like Black people being misclassified as gorillas, the thing they would do is they went in and overrode the ability for the algorithm to even label gorillas. Like, well, we're just going to take it out and then we're going to go and fix the problem. So
Yeah.
usually
So you
I
can't
use a
just
system.
add more to it and then just be like adjust it. You have to actually remove that whole
So it's
system.
not so much that there's one way that it can happen wrong, right? There could be multiple ways that happens wrong. It just happened that we figured out. The way I would think of it is I figured one way not to make a light bulb, but there might be 6 or 7 other ways not to make a light bulb, right? So there might be some other errors in there. And so for their particular mitigation, they removed the ability to tag gorillas and then went forward and fixed the problem. So part of some of the solutions is adding more data. The other one, and you brought up IBM. IBM has a tool called AI Fairness 360, which allows you to understand your data set and see if there are any potentials for some faux pas. So it will say, hey, your images are leaning a little more like they have a lot more white people in it or more black. It would be able to tell you and say, this is where you're leaning. And maybe you want to get more neutral. And so there's also a couple different algorithms that can be applied to help understand the data. The other third option that people have to fix their data if something's wrong is to clean it up. So to make sure that there's maybe a proliferation of the correct tags on the correct, correctly describing this image or what. There's also, the case that it's not images, right? It could be some other piece of data. But in images case or in any type of classifying case, you can either clean it, you can add more data, or you can make some more rules so that it doesn't make those mistakes.
What other crazy stuff have you seen that you're like, why is it still like this in terms of
Oh,
why
wow, that's a good question.
we ha
So much. Let me think here. And you mean like maybe in real life?
yeah, like for example, Jermaine here wrote, as a man, I have a beard. I get tagged as a woman regardless of my beard. So that's in images, but I'm not just saying in images. There's a million other
Okay,
things. Like
yeah.
I noticed one the other day that I was like so shocked about that. What was it? What is
And
it? Or
I
do you
think,
have some off
yeah,
off the top of your head where you're
there
like,
are,
why?
yeah.
Like people think we're so ahead, but in terms of AI and bias, we're actually
Yeah.
super behind, and it's very simple. Some of these things.
Yeah, so okay, so here's some ways that people are trying to create systems that sound like they're complicated, but in the back end they're so simple that they do make mistakes. So for example, there was a robot that Microsoft created. It was a Twitter bot, and it was called Tay. And it was supposed to be a way for us, Twitter users, to just talk to an AI algorithm. But it turned out really bad because what happened is a bunch of people, trolls, started sending Tay different types of statuses and tweets that were, just socially wrong. They were maybe homophobic or something like that, or a little too political. And Tay actually started mirroring the messages that it was receiving. So
Wow.
instead of creating
When was
a
that?
place for, say it again, it was terrible. They Oh,
What do you know what
this was
year that
early.
happened?
Yeah, this was like 2002 in the 2010s. I don't think it
Okay.
was like, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to go and check. You can't quote me on that. But yeah, it was a while ago though. That was one example of just not necessarily having, and the reason why I think it was wrong or what went wrong was, not having a baseline. They allowed the
Mm.
baseline to get filled by other people. And so that's when you want to have something that's already existing that has those rules, because the AI bot is not going to know the socially courteous, socially acceptable responses if you're giving them, irresponsible responses. One more example
Yeah.
is search engines, right? The way we use search engines, we use it with the way that we talk to each other in society. So they did I think it was MIT published a story that some researchers had worked on a search engine that was running Google. And when they asked the search engine to give them relationships, societal relationships, it was very sexist. So it was father is to mother as man is to computer programmer. Then they asked, okay, mother is to homemaker or it was like woman in homemaker is what is equated to, you know, just women working in the workplace. So those were two examples that you can pull out, but there are some others in their paper of just the relationships that we use daily as we talk with each other are informing
Yeah.
the algorithms, especially in search engine algorithms, how to either view the relationships that we have with each other based on the way we talk about each other, which is kind of a tongue twister, but that's another example of the algorithm itself isn't the sexist one or the racist one. It's actually reflecting our culture as it exists. And so when I give my talk, I talk about how we need to make sure that the world that AI interprets for us tomorrow does not have those isms in there, those
Right.
homophobic, you know, ideas and those things that we know is not where we want to be as a society. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually pull you this book because I went to a talk recently online, obviously, uh,
Yeah.
by this AI woman, Rana Kaliyobi. Have you heard of this?
I
Gr-
think, yes, I think so.
Girl
Awesome.
Decoded. It's about how AI also like doesn't have feelings, and how we need to bring back more like human feelings into AI. And her parents were engineers also, so she grew up in like understanding them. She has a
Yeah.
company, but I forget what her company is.
And there
But
are two more books I
there's
want to add or pull
yeah,
out. There's one by Sophia Noble, The Algorithmic Oppression, which is really cool. And it talks about Google as a not a search engine, but really as an ad service. And why that is, because that's why you have the problems we have. If their main goal was to understand and get us more information, there probably would be a different development process for them. So Algorithmic Oppression by Sophia Noble. And then one more is Weapons of Math Destruction. So instead of mass, it's math destruction. That gets even more broader, which if you have a math background or you're interested in reading about math, that one will give you an even more broader take instead of just the algorithms and just Google. It will show you kind of how this is really just a statistical uh, inevitability that we were going to have this problem. And so for me, that's why I come to all my engineering projects with how do I make this better? How do I make the products that we're putting out there better? If you put something out there and you leave it on a shelf, it's not going to just remain there. People are
yeah.
going to engage with it and they're going to find ways that you wouldn't necessarily want to be representative of your brand as a builder, creator, and engineer. And so you need to be constantly thinking about how to make them better. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. Like for me, like my annoying one is reCAPTCHA. I'm like, every
Okay.
time I have to pick a stupid taxi or a thing, I'm like,
That's square.
I need to call whoever's working on reCAPTCHA because like basically people don't think, but we actually have to use these products every day in random, like, like I guess the regular person doesn't think, but maybe you have to do reCAPTCHA like 3 times a month. Okay. And you have like literally the worst photos ever in there. And it's such a bad experience. So people think like, oh, AI is so far away from me. I'm not, I have nothing to do with it, but it actually impacts minutes and hours of your days and your months.
It's second to second. Every time you pick up your phone, you're interacting with 5 or 6 AI algorithms. Guarantee it. It is right here. It's not what you do when you
Yeah.
open up your box anymore. It's everything you do.
Also, the emotional stuff actually like really, it's so interesting because like I know it's like kind of morbid, but during COVID, like I've seen a bunch of people put funerals and stuff on Facebook, and then it
Mm,
saves as like live, and then Facebook reminds you of that anniversary. And I'm like, Facebook, don't you know? Or like when people are like, oh, I miss my whatever person. And I'm like,
hmm.
Facebook doesn't have emotions to be like, don't remind this person of this event that was like really sad. Um,
Yep.
and I'm
And
like
so,
thinking like whose job is it to sit and be like thinking about that? Do you know?
yeah, there's
Like what
there's
are
two things I want
these
to.
companies like who are the people that are like, let's
Yeah.
not concern people with like funeral reminders, you know?
So a lot of times algorithmic like fairness and having those things do better for us based on our moods and our needs and our emotional needs to what you're saying is a different team if they even have a team that's dedicated to that, because if you think about it, engineers are very overwhelmed by all the things that they need to do to, right, make the company more money or to make sure that they don't lose money. So sometimes there's this middle line of a team that needs to be in place to think about it from a neutral standpoint, like what is fair. So I have a system for that. I call it FRAT. But you can look up, and there's another one called FAP. So I kind of modified it, and it's fairness, making sure that it's fair, the different either decisions that algorithms are making. So for example, in your case with all your images being labeled with white children instead of, everything. So that wasn't fair. So that would be a fairness. It's really important to look for that and to make sure that we're mitigating unfairness. Responsibility. So that goes to when you are told that there's a problem, like you did when you called Amazon and IBM, hey, there's a problem. Someone needs to be there to actually receive that initial contact and be able to say, yeah, let me put this into our bug system, right? Then there's accountability. So if someone says that there's a problem, is there a plan already documented in place at the company that says, if we come up with this problem, because you can't fix everything, so someone presents us a problem, who is accountable for implementing, the fix by what time? And then finally is transparency. And this is something that we can all get on board with and make sure that we're letting Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google know, is we want levers. We want to be able to understand and change our experience on their platforms because it's using our data. So I want to be able to tell my Facebook feed, show me ideas that are outside my worldview. Don't just show me the ones that I agree with. I don't want to be insulated. Or in the case of, the emotional content, can I effectively remove this post from ever showing up again? I do that a lot with my dead cat. Like, I don't want to see this, And so being an advocate for ourselves, but really everybody around us to have those levers is really important. I do have one more story on emotional intelligence for algorithms. This is where women in leadership is really important. So I was approached by another woman who's done great work in the advocacy space, and she wanted to bring this to the algorithm space, in the AI space. And her idea was there's so many stories out there that have really captured history, but they're all male-centered. And so that means if someone ever decides to build a system that collects all the historical stories out there, it's going to be male-centered. So let's put out an algorithm.
Isn't Google collecting all the stories?
Right, but it's based on how it's user generated. So if it's user generated, right, and if you think of who has access to the internet,
Wikipedia or some sort of Wikipedia or something.
But everything that's user generated has the potential, if it's not crafted carefully, to be male-centered or to be male-dominated or to be in some other way, Western culture dominated, right? Everything, we embed our biases in every piece of work that we do. So her idea was to create an algorithm that would supplement other algorithms. So let's say you have an algorithm where you're taking in stories, you see that it's male-centered, someone's called you out on it already, and you need a fix. This would be one of the fixes, to insert this algorithm that has carefully crafted woman leadership stories from history. Add that to your algorithm, supplement it, and then you might have a healthier...
Like a bias corrector?
Yeah, a bias corrector or an unbiased. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that people have tried to come up with words about how you're righting a wrong and providing equity for other people, other groups of people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I never thought about it from an API perspective that you could.
Yeah.
I always thought about it from an internal system, like the company itself has to fix it, but not like you can just buy a product that you can insert that can then fix it. But then obviously you need
basically unbiasing as a service. Unbiasing as a service.
Yeah, that's a good idea because it's just even sitting there and explaining to the company, it's so hard to reprioritize, obviously, when you have so much going on. And also you need something kind of faster, I guess. Yeah. So,
and something that's done with expertise. That's part of it, right? We can become, especially those of us with lived experiences, can help these companies and create an industry for this, an industry need for people that come in and share their experiences. And that's a little bit better, I think, than the way we've been doing diversity is, okay,
which is I'm an expert like the
Yeah.
resident expert with that has to shoulder all their work and then all everything else.
Yep.
Like the
Make it
one,
a
like
part,
you
make
walk
it a
into a
team.
San Francisco office and you see one like woman engineer and like 100 men, and her job is to fix the whole algorithm to be adjusted,
Yep.
like, and do her a job. Like it's there's and like again, there is no science behind that. So even if she wants to, she's also stuck with all her biases from wherever she grew up and whoever she knew and whatever she went to for school. Like there's so she's also screwed basically.
Yeah, yeah, it can be a lot to
I don't
shoulder
know.
and a lot to like give someone else the responsibility to do when it's really a collective effort. And leadership starts at the top, right? It has to be something. That's why I really am appreciative of the fact that I'm at a startup right now that's led by Black women. I'm like, I really like this because of the leadership that starts at the top. And then I'm here. You know, the fact that they even co-signed me to be on the team is also part of it. Is just being
Yeah.
willing to look at my systems, look at my process, and make it better. Can't fix it, can't get rid of everything, but I can make it better and then use FRAT, you know, the system of responsibility and accountability to make sure that whatever does come my way, we are capable of
Yeah.
delivering some type of solution. Hmm.
But it's like to me, it's 90% of the work is in collaboration and in the systems that you use. You can do as much as you want within your company, but again, it's when you use Amazon for your storage or you're using like whatever products and services you're using in your life. Like I think we've gotten really good at that from a like food ordering. Like when we order food at a restaurant, everybody has comments like, "Is this all natural?" You know, like they're able to participate in Yelp, for example. But there's nothing like that when it comes from systems. So you just have to like kind of dig yourself in and like make your voice heard, whether, you
And now
know,
when I started,
even though it's like inconvenient, you don't have time for it
yeah,
sometimes.
no, when I started giving this talk, there was no out of the box solution. There was no way to look for um, for these solutions. And so now since, you know, 5, 6 years into it, now we're starting to see Google come out with their tool, the What If tool. IBM came out with the Fairness 360 tool, these unbiasing services. And so then it comes down to making them more ubiquitous because they're kind of clunky. They're kind of hard to handle. They're kind of hard to understand too sometimes, even though they're doing a great job of visualization. So the more we do, the more we'll unburden that one lonely woman engineer on a team to having to take care of the problem by herself. You know, that's why we need to keep building these communities. And I'm also all for micro communities that like help us understand the plight of their community, even no matter how small of a space geographically we're talking about, you know. Being able to create community-based solutions and then getting that out there and saying, hey, this is how you can help my community. I think that can be the most lo-fi but very instrumental way to unbias different technology. Yep.
That's great. Well, I'm wondering, is there anything like when you were younger that like really changed your life?
Um,
You said you did a
for
bunch of internships and like you kind of had a
yeah,
passion, like you had a passion, then you started to kind of like investigate and then you went one way. Like there's tons of people that have like a passion, but then their next steps become clunky and they don't know how to kind of maneuver. Is
sure.
there something that happened to you where you're like, okay, now my road is more clear?
Yeah, you know, I think I'm young, but I definitely think I'm on my fourth career here. So I was homeschooled in Idaho. And so that brought a lot of time for me to explore. And my mom was really a big proponent on you're going to learn how to talk to professionals early because when you're in college, you need to be able to do this. So she would take us to to interview train engineers because we had a train depot. She would make us do all these different things. And one of the things I had to do was go to the local university and spend time in their high school program for future engineers. And so at that time, I was really interested in space
How'd
science.
you get
And
into that?
how did
You
I
ap-
get into the
you apply
university?
you applied to a like a was it for teenagers? Like a
So this was a come as you are, like, you know, just come. It was a drop-in event. So it was the lowest barrier ever. And what happened is when I walked in the door and met the dean of the College of Engineering and some other woman, there was a focus on women leadership there. So that was nice. I got introduced to the former astronaut Barbara Morgan, who actually was someone who lived in Idaho and went up to space and had just gotten back. And I was really impressed with her because I wanted to be an astronaut. So that was what my goal was. I want to be an astronaut. Here's an astronaut. Let me go to this school. I was like, Mom, I have to go to this school now because I want her to
School
be my
and
mentor.
then next stop space, just a hop
Yeah, right. That was
away
the
from
plan.
the.
And I pretty much touched it. I did space research my first year. I got to talk to astronauts in space my first year at school. Based on this relationship I was building with her, she mentored me for 4 years, and it was amazing. And so then I was getting into my bigger coursework, like mechanical engineering. And I started playing around with robots, and I realized I needed a real career. Being an astronaut is not an actual career. That's like the culmination of a
Don't
great
tell them
career. Like
that.
it's the second, it's not the actual, like you have to come in as an expert in your domain expertise. And that's the way
Oh,
they
okay.
become, they have to first
Oh,
be really good at what they do. And then people are like, you're an astronaut now after you go through a lot more schooling. So I was like, okay, well, if that's my plan, and if I really mean to be an astronaut, that means I have to find this first career. And so I decided that I had an internship. I got to hang out with President Obama. He came to my school.
oh my
So this was
God.
an opportunity for me to get some exposure because I introduced him, and then all of a sudden I
You
got a call from the
introduced
computer.
him?
I introduced him to my student body, which was really cool. It was really fun. And
Wow.
he was really gracious. And so what happened was because of that event, I was doing work like on campus somewhere, and the computer science department called me and was like, someone's asking for you to do an interview with you. They're at HP. Would you like to go and do this interview? And I was like, well, yeah. Now I'm a sophomore. They teach you in engineering, like don't expect to have an internship until your junior year because you don't know enough. So I just go as a learning experience. And so I went, and by the time I left that interview, I had a verbal offer. So that was where they identified, we like what you're doing. We want you to do a robotics project. And I had never done a
At
robotics project before
HP?
at HP. And they were like, yeah, we have a robotics team and we want you to go join them.
And
So
they
I
have
went.
like spots for interns. Like, so this is like an internship?
So this is an internship. And what's
Okay.
really important here is opportunities. Especially the ones that I've been able to have, are not ones that I wasn't gonna be able to apply for. There was no rec there for a robotics intern in Boise, Idaho, because they don't do that. Their thing is printers and computers, right? So this is an internal team, and because of the way I presented myself and my goals and aspirations, they were like, we've identified this would be a great spot for you. And so this is a really tell of having a great manager. It turned out I had two great managers though. I had a manager that gave me the project, a robotics manager. And between those two people, I really learned a lot in that year. I went on to go, they asked me, the CTO of HP came down to Boise to see the robotics team. And he asked me well, can you come up to Palo Alto? Can you come to headquarters and do the same thing? And so I got to the next year, I
Wow.
got to do a second internship there. So those are all really important for me building my career and exploring more. I thought I had it figured out. I was like, robotics is my thing. I even got to get an internship at Google and NVIDIA after that, based on my LinkedIn profile. They connected with me on LinkedIn and was like, would you be interested in doing robotics for us? That was two other opportunities to just explore. But then I really started feeling the call for this bias and AI conversation, but more importantly, product. Like we really need to be building better products. I want to have more leadership in the product space before it gets to me. Because as an intern, right, I'm looking kind of up at the decisions that are coming down the pipeline. I was like, I want to go higher. I want to see why we create these products and what the influences are. So that's what led me to my current role at the startup I'm at right now. So that was definitely the journey. First, it was space camp, talking to
Yeah,
astronauts. And then it
that's so
became, well,
cool.
what do you do with that? And I was like, I'd keep going further into emerging tech and see where that leads me. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's so like it seems like you just started to like talk to people and put yourself out there and not be shy because there's so many people that are talented but they never get a shot, and it's probably because they're not like just letting themselves known. Like the fact that people know who to call, if they know you're talented, they know you're passionate. If they have the passion is actually just as important. They're like, they're gonna appreciate this. Like if I ask her to introduce Obama, she's gonna be so excited
Yeah,
that they're not gonna pick somebody that they don't know for sure that this will be the most exciting thing for them. So I think
exactly.
for people like that passion needs to always be first, and then you should always like all those internships. Like for me too, like when I was younger, I got a number of very important opportunities where I like was seeing all this stuff that I was like, this is like at a young age, I was seeing what was possible. So I didn't have
Yeah,
the limitation in terms of my dreams because I had already seen very big ideas of what
yeah,
people could be like. And so I
yeah,
think like even if you don't know these people and you never might have a chance to go, all of it's available on the internet. Like you could literally just search CTO of HP, watch his speeches, maybe send him an email or a letter. If you're, you know, if you're good and you can just let people know who you are and try like to reach out to these people, but you have to like study it and really understand it first, and
yeah.
like have something to
I say,
offer.
yep. And the way I look at it is I could have a million mentors. So, no, and the way I realize that is I make a goal, like just like you said, CTO. Maybe my goal is I want to meet Michelle Obama, and if I go ahead and listen to every person that has something to offer me, whether it's someone younger than me, older than me. If I meet a million people and I have a million people give me those tips and introduce me to other people, my circle is gonna get closer and closer to Michelle Obama. And so that's the way
Michelle
I'm
should
attacking
be
it.
watching this.
And then that's the way I'm attacking it, and that's the way, and if you shoot for the moon, you'll probably get to space, right? Another one I want to just really quickly say is, it's not who you know and it's not what you know, it's who knows what you know. So you want to make sure, anybody that's listening to this wants to make sure that, at the very least, those relationships that you are comfortable with, make sure that they understand your skill set, because they might be the ones that, have you do something that gets you that great exposure, but they're also your trusted sources. If they say, hey, I think, introducing President Obama would be a good idea for you, then you would trust them and be able to walk through that. And that's part of that, especially if you're shy or nervous, allowing other people to like show you and to encourage you and to, put in front. I've even told people when I do speaking engagements and I'm not as confident that day and I'm feeling very nervous, I'll tell the person that's introducing me, hey, when you sit down, don't feel afraid to like give me the slow down signal, and I ask people for help in that moment. So if that's something that's helpful to you, I hope you take that. Like ask the people that are right around you for help. And the more wherever you go, continue to do that. And that will expand your network naturally, organically. And you won't feel fake about it or like you have to pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah, and also that's something you can practice. Like I interviewed one of our other customers, is like he founded this thing called I think Out Loud Speaker School, and he trains people on public speaking. And they do like he was a former actor for like 18 years, and then he was like, I want to teach people how to like talk because nobody knows how to like give all of them like give more of themselves and be expressive and
Yep,
not to be shy. So
yep,
if you're able to do that, then you do get opportunities like the Obama one. Like if you can carry yourself and not be afraid, and that takes practice, and you can literally just be in front of the mirror saying the same thing 100 times, 100 times, 100 times. But
absolutely.
but it's a good
And
skill to practice, even if you don't have an opportunity, just to practice talking to people. Because if you can talk, you're going to be promoted in your job. You're going to get the like
yeah.
opportunities because it's such a people don't try to do that. Like everyone like they want to be in this more. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say before I gave that speech to introduce Obama, I gave 13 other speeches that bombed because that was my freshman, sophomore year. That was the first time I'd ever been in front of more, and I was homeschooled, right? I really wasn't used to public speaking. I used to shake like this when I was public speaking, like it wrecked me. And so by
Yeah.
the time that I gave that speech, the dean or whoever nominated me for that opportunity, they had seen me progressing over time from my freshman year because I gave a lot of speeches that bombed, like talking real fast to a bunch of people who were supposed to be coming to find out what the university was about, and I couldn't like keep myself together. So
Yeah,
by the time I got to that one, people had seen my progress and they knew that I was willing to do it. So,
that's awesome. Well, when are
yep.
you going to come work for Scopio?
Okay, yeah, as long as I can work remotely, I can show you a little bit of my view.
Oh,
Like
that's
this is
great.
this is
I'm
where I
all for
live.
it. I grew up in Missouri actually, so I'm familiar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can work remotely as long as you can solve the problem of these titles for me. Like it's such a big problem. I have like
Yeah,
a whole team on it now. I have a whole team on it
good.
now because but and I actually started it working at a lab and we have an AI person who's my friend that has been working on it for years with me on this problem with search suggestions and bringing up the best types of content. It's a hard problem to solve,
And it's a
especially
system, right?
on especially on what me and my business partner were talking about. It's like we would love ethnicities to be involved in the search discovery process. So we're trying to like bring that as a part of the cues beyond what's just in the photo.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, it's definitely a hard problem and there are different systems. Like you can't just throw one thing at it. You gotta throw a couple things at it and make sure it's robust. So, send me an email. Definitely.
Awesome. Stay in touch. My Instagram is Christina Hawatma on my personal one. And then you have Scopio here. But thank you. And how can we help you? Like, do you have more? What are your photo needs? What can help you guys tell your story better?
Yeah. I think the more Black people at computers and in with technology. That would be helpful. That's one of the things that I look for all the time. And like after a while, it gets to be, the same images
Yeah.
over and over. But I think more technology based photos for, Black people, but then also obviously people of different color. I think sometimes the different ways that we frame photos are really important. So I really like, let me tell you, I've definitely helped. I have clients that are in wellness, and I go to Scopio every time. I'm like, let me pull up my favorite site,
I
to
love
help
it.
you find some good and well designed and well designed pictures of Black women. Usually that was like what I was looking for. So yeah, I think going further, working at the startup when we're doing like marketing events, that's really key because we're a technology company and our literal clientele are people um, who want to be seen as successful doing those roles. So sometimes having that image and that framing of, yeah, you're working at a tech company, you got your two screens going on, and that's the vision of themselves that they want to see. So that's sometimes hard to find and look for. So if that's something y'all add, I would love it and we would use it for sure. Yeah.
That's great. We're actually working on a project now with Shopify for like Black women in color in tech. And
Awesome.
we've been getting submissions for it. And I'm like, the women are not in tech. So I'm actually trying to find women in tech to photograph. So I might have to
Oh,
ask you if I have anyone in Idaho, I might have to hit you up
yeah,
for that.
and if it's not in Idaho, which is understandable because it's Idaho, I can definitely refer you to some of my friends and colleagues in the tech space who I know would be more than welcome or more than happy to represent women in tech. They're really excited about it. And I can also even put you in contact with the person who last did this successfully. Have you heard of Women in Tech Photos? Um, it's by
Women in tech
Christina
photos.
Murillo, I think. And
I think so.
so she's organized it before, and maybe she'd be a good organizer to contact to see how you could put on a new and updated version. Because I know that I would appreciate some more variety in my photos, so that would be awesome. Yeah.
I know it's such a big problem. Like I'm with you on it. So we're working on it and we're getting it. We're actually doing that right now. So hopefully
I love
that
it. It's good.
that collection will be up. But if anybody's listening and you have people to photograph like that, don't get the basic photo like everybody else does. Try to photograph people in real life.
Yes.
And that's Scopio's mission is to get that vision of what's happening. And it's not just women in tech, it's also anyone of 50 and above is impossible to get. Like people don't want to take photos of their parents or their grandparents. It's like it's the Instagram vibe. So uh,
Yeah.
reality also is great. So if anybody's watching, uh, get your friend, photograph them, document them, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um, yeah, I really appreciate that too. Like just the realness of the photos. It's like just that one like and it's like it's not tangible when you think about it when you're looking at other stock photos. It's like there's something different about it. It's just very real and authentic, and I really appreciate that a lot.
thank you. Well, we're at 300,000. Our goal is to get to millions by the end of the year. So,
Yes,
well, thanks, Camille. I appreciate it, and I'm so happy to meet you.
absolutely. It was really nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.